I want to start today with a scenario.
Okay.
A specific moment in time that I think every single person listening to this right now has experienced.
Oh, I am intrigued.
And I do not mean experience in some vague, abstract way. I mean, you have felt this in your bones.
Right. Set the scene for us.
So it is 2:00 p.m. on a Saturday. Or actually, maybe it is 9:00 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
You are right in the middle of something that you chose to do.
That is a key detail.
Right? Nobody forced you. You chose to build that shelf, or you sat down to write that novel,
right.
Or you decided you were going to learn Spanish.
Voluntary hardship.
Exactly. But suddenly you hit this invisible wall.
Yeah.
And it is not just that you are getting bored. It is physically painful.
The agony of effort.
Yes, the agony of effort. You get this overwhelming, almost magnetic pull to just stop, to walk away. It feels like your battery has literally been ripped out.
Oh, absolutely.
And the source material we are doing a deep dive into today makes a really disturbing claim about this specific moment.
It is disturbing, but honestly, it is also incredibly liberating once you actually understand it.
So the claim is that this feeling, this heaviness, this complete I need to quit sensation.
Yeah.
It is a lie.
A total biological forgery.
Which is wild to think about. We are looking at excerpts today from a really fascinating collection called The Architecture of Grit, Finishing What You Start.
Right.
And the core thesis here is that your brain is, it is fundamentally designed to be a coward.
A coward is a bit harsh.
Is it?
Well, let us call it a conservative survivor.
Okay, conservative survivor.
Because evolutionarily speaking, burning energy on a task that does not immediately result in food or reproduction or safety is basically a bad investment.
Right, the caveman brain.
Exactly. So when you are 3 hours into a DIY project and your blood sugar drops even slightly, your limbic system just screams.
Threat detected.
Yes, threat detected. Conserve energy. Lie down right now.
So that little voice in my head saying, you are tired, you deserve a break.
Yeah.
That is not me practicing self-care. Because I got to tell you, it sounds a lot like self-care. It sounds like a really supportive friend.
And that is the trick. That is how it gets you 90% of the time. No, that is just your inner caveman trying to keep you fat and safe on the couch.
Wow.
It is a mechanism designed for a world of absolute scarcity, but it is operating in a modern world where you are trying to achieve higher level goals.
Which totally shifts the paradigm.
Right. And what we are going to unpack in this deep dive is how to distinguish that biological noise, that false signal, from actual, genuine, necessary rest.
And that is the hook for me. The central conflict we are looking at today is this very specific question. Does feeling tired mean you should stop?
Right.
Is it your body telling you enough? Or is it actually a signal that you are right on the verge of a breakthrough?
It is a vital distinction because if we misinterpret that signal, we quit.
We leave things half finished.
Exactly. But if we interpret it correctly, we build grit. And grit is not just toughness. The source makes this clear. It is a specific psychological architecture.
So to explore this architecture, we are looking at a really fascinating set of discussions between two individuals in the source text, Emma and John.
And look, on the surface, they're just talking about completely regular life stuff.
Yeah, DIY disasters, running a 5K, learning a language.
But that is exactly what makes it so rich.
Right. They are not climbing Mount Everest.
No. We always hear these grit stories about Navy SEALs or Olympic athletes, and honestly, it is hard for the average person to relate to that.
Totally.
But Emma and John are talking about the micro battles of willpower that we literally fight every single day in our living rooms.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to extract actionable strategies for pushing past that wall.
Yes.
We want to understand the profound difference between resting and quitting. And to do that, we need to talk about the quotes that kicks this whole thing off.
The mantra.
The mantra. So in the source, John mentions he is walking past a gym and he sees this sign in the window and it basically stops him in his tracks. The sign says, "Do not stop when you are tired. Stop when you are done."
It is such a provocative statement. Do not stop when you are tired. Stop when you are done.
It is intense. It feels almost militaristic to me.
It is. And the reason it is so jarring to read is that it is completely counterintuitive to our base biological programming.
Break that down a bit. How so?
Well, think about basic human instinct. Our baseline evolutionary drive is to conserve energy and avoid strain at all costs.
Right.
We are essentially energy efficiency machines. If you are tired, your brain, which is purely designed to keep you safe and comfortable, says, okay, threat detected, energy depletion detected.
Stop immediately.
Stop immediately. Seek comfort.
Go to the cave, eat the food, sleep. Do not burn calories on something that is not actively chasing you.
Exactly. So when you see a sign that says, do not stop when you are tired, it is asking you to override millions of years of evolutionary coding.
That is a lot of pressure.
It is asking you to forcefully separate the physical sensation of fatigue from the cognitive decision to terminate the activity.
That is a huge ask. I mean, it is super easy to read on a gym poster while you're holding a smoothie.
Right.
But applying it, that is where the actual struggle is. How do you actually do that when your body is literally screaming at you?
You have to understand the architecture of what the source calls the messy middle.
The messy middle.
And the text dives straight into a real-world application of this that I think is, well, it is tragically relatable.
You are talking about the bookshelf.
The infamous bookshelf.
Let us look at this first case study. So we have John. And John decides he is going to tackle this wobbly bookshelf in his apartment. He is going to fix it.
A classic weekend warrior project.
Exactly. And he starts with what the author calls the optimism bias. Now, we have heard this term before in other contexts.
Yeah.
But the source breaks down what is actually happening in John's brain here. Why do we always think a 4-hour task is going to take 45 minutes?
It is a fascinating defect in human cognition. It is often called the planning fallacy.
Okay.
The text explains that when we plan a task, we are almost exclusively visualizing the best-case scenario.
We imagine the screws going in straight.
We imagine the wood is perfectly cut. We do not visualize the stripped screw. We do not visualize the humidity making the wood swell up so things do not fit.
We plan for the destination, not the actual journey.
Precisely. We visualize the feeling of having the bookshelf, not the physical feeling of building it.
Right.
So John says, I will knock this out in an hour. He creates a mental contract with himself that is based on a complete fantasy.
Famous last words, I will knock this out. So cut to 2 hours later. This is the crisis point. This is where the tired versus done battle actually happens. Let us paint the picture the source gives us, because it is vivid. It is not just that he is bored.
No.
The actual physical conditions are turning against him.
Right. His back is aching. He has been hunched over this thing. His hands are covered in dust.
The apartment is sweltering. The AC is barely working.
And that heat is a massive factor. We constantly underestimate how much environmental discomfort degrades our willpower.
It just drains the battery faster.
It adds to the irritability. And the state of the project itself, the bookshelf is not almost done. It is literally in pieces on the floor.
That is the absolute worst moment in any project. When you have dismantled the old thing, but you have not built the new thing yet.
Yes.
You are just standing there in the wreckage.
This is the messy middle. This is the single most dangerous phase of any endeavor.
Why is this so dangerous?
Because you have lost the dopamine hit of the start.
Right. The excitement of the new project is gone.
Exactly. But you are nowhere near the dopamine hit of the finish. You are stranded in a neurotransmitter desert.
A neurotransmitter desert. I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
You're just hiking through the sand with no water.
Exactly. And this is exactly where the brain offers him a deal. The source calls it the temptation to just abandon everything, to order a pizza.
And binge watch a series? But why is that specific temptation so strong? Why pizza and TV? Why not, I will just go read a book or take a walk?
Because pizza and TV are the exact opposite of the current stressor.
How so?
Well, the bookshelf represents chaos. It represents physical effort, ambiguity, and the very real possibility of failure.
Right.
Pizza and a series represent passive consumption, total comfort, and a guaranteed immediate reward.
The brain is screaming, choose the pizza, it is a safe bet.
It is a trade. High effort, low reward right now versus zero effort, high reward right now. In the immediate term, yeah, that makes total sense.
And this is where John has to use a cognitive tool to override that circuit. He uses negative visualization.
Now wait. Usually in these self-help discussions, we are always told to visualize success.
Right.
Visualize the finished shelf. Visualize how happy you will be when it is done.
But the source argues that visualizing success can actually be counterproductive in the messy middle.
Yeah, because it feels like daydreaming. It can actually trick your brain into feeling like you have already achieved it, which ironically lowers your motivation to actually do the work.
Oh, wow. So you get the reward without the effort.
Exactly. John needs a stick in this moment, not a carrot.
So what does he actually do?
He looks at the massive mess on his floor, and he asks himself, if I stop right now, What does my next week look like?
He plays the tape forward.
He realizes that if he stops now, the living room remains a literal disaster zone for the entire week.
He will have to step over piles of wood just to get to the kitchen.
So he is weighing two completely different types of pain.
Break those down.
On one side, you have the physical tiredness he feels right now. His back, the heat. That is acute, but it is temporary. It will be gone in an hour or two.
Right.
On the other side, you have the mental clutter of living with a half-finished project for 7 days.
Mental clutter. The source really leans into this as a real psychological drain.
It absolutely is. In psychology, there is something called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Essentially, unfinished tasks stay active in your working memory. They create a constant cognitive load.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Every single time John walks past that pile of wood, his brain has to process it as an unresolved issue.
So it drains a little bit of his energy battery just by sitting there.
It is exactly like having an app running in the background of your phone that just slowly drains the battery all day.
That is a perfect analogy.
So John realizes that the pain of quitting that background battery drain for a whole week is actually way higher than the pain of just pushing through the backache right now.
That is a really powerful reframe. It is not work versus rest. It is temporary physical fatigue versus prolonged mental irritation.
Precisely. He realizes the pizza will not actually taste good if he is eating it while staring at a pile of broken wood.
The guilt would ruin the pizza.
Exactly.
So he pushes through. And he finishes at 10:00 p.m., which, let us be honest, is a very late night for a DIY project that started at noon.
It is a marathon for a bookshelf.
But the source highlights the payoff. And it is not just that the shelf is done and looks nice, it is the physiological reaction.
The dopamine hit.
Placing that final book on the shelf.
We really have to understand that our brains are deeply wired for completion.
Right.
When you close the loop, when the task finally switches from in progress to done, the brain releases dopamine. It is a powerful reward chemical.
It is nature's way of saying, good job, you survived.
Exactly.
The source makes a really beautiful distinction here, I think. It says the physical exhaustion remained. He was still physically tired.
Yeah.
But it was overshadowed by the satisfaction.
And that is the core lesson here. Fatigue is temporary. Satisfaction is permanent. If he had quit, he would still have been tired from the 2 hours of work, but he would also have felt guilty and stressed.
By finishing, he kept the tiredness, but swapped the guilt for pride.
That is a trade you should make every single time.
I love that quote from the source. Fatigue is temporary. Results are permanent.
It is a great way to summarize it.
It reminds me a lot of endurance sports, actually. Which leads us perfectly into part 2 of our deep dive. We are shifting gears entirely from home repair to running.
Right. We are looking at the other character, Emma. And this brings in a totally different dimension of the wall.
So Emma challenges herself to run 5 kilometers. Now, the source notes, and I really appreciate this nuance, that for some people, a 5K is literally just a warm-up.
Right.
But for Emma, this is her marathon.
Which is such an important context to set. Effort is relative. We should never judge our hard against someone else's easy.
Definitely.
For her, this was max effort. This was her Mount Everest.
And she hits the wall at the 4-kilometer mark.
The classic danger zone.
Why is 4 kilometers so dangerous in a 5K?
Because you are close enough to the end to know it is coming, but you are far enough away that it feels physically impossible to sustain the effort to get there.
The symptoms she describes are so visceral. Legs like lead, burning lungs.
Yeah.
But the most interesting part is the psychological scream. Her brain starts literally yelling at her.
Just walk. Nobody is watching.
That nobody is watching line is so insidious. That is the ultimate integrity test, is it not?
It really is. It is so easy to work hard when you have an audience.
Right, when your boss is looking.
Or your spouse is watching you. But when you are alone in a park and the only person you're actually accountable to is yourself.
That is when the brain tries to negotiate a full surrender.
It uses social logic against you. It is basically saying, look, there is no social cost to quitting right now. No one will shame you on Twitter, so just quit.
It is trying to find a loophole in your willpower.
Exactly.
So she is right on the edge of stopping. She is literally seconds away from just walking the rest of the way. And then the source gives us this moment of total absurdity.
A dog incident.
The dog incident. It is so unexpected in a serious text about grit.
I know, it really catches you off guard.
A small dog just runs across her path and drops a ball right at her feet.
Right in the middle of her complete agony.
In the middle of this existential battle with her own lungs. And she has to do this clumsy, totally awkward dance just to avoid tripping over the dog.
She describes herself as looking like a flailing windmill.
It is such a funny, chaotic image.
It really is.
But here's the actual analysis question. Why did this help? Because the source explicitly says this silly moment saved her run. Why? Was it just a simple distraction?
It is way more than just a distraction. This is a perfect textbook example of pattern interruption.
Break that down for us. What exactly is the pattern that is being interrupted?
So Emma is stuck in a loop. Her brain is just looping on pain, stop, heavy legs, quit.
Right.
That loop is consuming 100% her mental bandwidth. It is a complete tunnel vision of suffering.
She is hyper-focused on her own misery.
Exactly. Then suddenly, chaos, a dog, a ball, a trip.
She almost falls.
Her brain has to instantly snap out of the suffering loop to handle the immediate physical crisis of not falling flat on her face.
So it breaks the circuit.
It completely breaks the circuit. The brain cannot process, I am dying of fatigue, and do not step on the puppy at the exact same time.
And the puppy wins.
The puppy always wins.
And because she looks so ridiculous, flailing around like a windmill, she actually laughs.
And that laughter is the critical mechanism here. That is the secret sauce.
Why? Is it just about boosting her mood?
No, it is deeply physiological. You literally cannot be physically tense and genuinely laughing at the same time.
Really?
It is biologically impossible. Laughter forces an immediate release of tension in the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. It momentarily lowers your cortisol levels.
Wow, so it is a literal chemical reset.
It is. It's signaled to her body, hey, this is not life or death. We are not actually being chased by a lion. We are just a person running in a park, awkwardly avoiding a small dog.
It lowered the stakes of the pain.
It made her take the situation less seriously. And that sudden release of tension freed up just enough energy for her to refocus and finish.
That is fascinating. Because usually when we talk about grit, we think it means clenching your jaw and just frowning through the pain.
Right, the gritted teeth face.
But here, the actual key to persistence was not gritting her teeth harder, it was laughing at the absurdity of the pain.
Absolutely. Taking yourself too seriously creates rigidity.
And rigidity breaks.
Exactly. Rigidity breaks under pressure. Humor creates flexibility. Flexibility endures. If you can laugh at how much your legs hurt, you have detached yourself from the pain just enough to manage it.
She mentions collapsing on the grass at the very end, unable to even move, but grinning.
The grin is the victory. The collapse is just the body doing what it needs to do.
I want to connect this to the third part of our deep dive, because the source material draws a really direct line between these physical struggles, the shelf and the run, and the purely mental process of learning.
Yes.
Specifically language learning, which I think a lot of people listening are tackling right now.
And this is where the learner profile really comes into focus, because physical fatigue is super easy to identify.
Right, my legs hurt, my back hurts.
But mental fatigue, that is much trickier to diagnose.
The source identifies what it calls kilometer number 4 in learning. What is that stage?
It is the plateau. Think about the standard learning curve. When you start learning something new, say you start learning Spanish, it is incredibly exciting.
Everything is new.
Right. You learn hello and coffee, and you immediately feel like an absolute genius.
That is the optimism bias again. I will be fluent in a month. This is so easy.
That is the first kilometer. You are fresh, you have momentum, but then you inevitably hit the middle.
The messy middle.
The messy middle of learning. The novelty has completely worn off. You get into irregular verbs. The grammar gets complicated.
You are making mistakes constantly.
You feel stupid.
And that feeling of stupidity is genuinely painful.
It really is. You are struggling just to find basic words. And this is the exact same legs like lead feeling. But for your brain, it is cognitive drag.
And the source points out a very stark binary outcome here. This is the critical juncture.
Right. There are basically only two paths forward. Path 1. You quit because you feel mentally tired.
And the result?
The result is you never reach fluency. All that work you did up to that point, wasted. It just evaporates.
And path 2?
Path 2, you persist until the communicative goal is actually met.
And the result is you become a speaker.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. The source makes a really interesting commentary about the actual nature of this tiredness.
Yes.
It suggests that in learning, we constantly mislabel our feelings.
This is a crucial insight. We very often interpret boredom and frustration as physical fatigue.
Unpack that a bit more.
Well, imagine you are sitting there staring at your flashcards, and you say to yourself, I am just too tired to study tonight.
We have all said that.
But are you actually tired? If a friend called you right in that exact moment and said, hey, let us go to a party or let us go see a movie, would you suddenly have energy?
Almost certainly, yes.
So you are not physically tired. You are emotionally frustrated. You are bored by the repetition of the flashcards. You are annoyed that you keep forgetting the stupid word for library.
Right.
We label that specific emotional friction as tiredness because being tired is a socially acceptable excuse to stop working.
Woo! That is a massive call out. So saying I am tired is often just a mask for saying I'm afraid I'm not getting this.
Exactly. Realizing that it is emotional resistance, not an actual cognitive incapacity, is a huge step in pushing through the plateau.
You have to call yourself out.
You do. You have to tell yourself, I am not tired, I'm just annoyed, and I am perfectly capable of studying while annoyed.
It is that internal whisper again, just do this tomorrow.
And if you listen to it, tomorrow never actually comes. Because guess what? Tomorrow you will be annoyed too.
That is so true. Okay, so we have deeply diagnosed the problem. We know all about the optimism bias, the messy middle, the wall, the plateau.
We know the enemy.
We know about the deceptive nature of the tiredness signal. Now, we need the toolkit.
The strategies.
This is Deep Dive Part 4. The source gives us 3 very specific tactical strategies for persistence.
And these are highly actionable. You can literally start using these today.
Strategy number 1. The 5-minute rule. John actually uses this with his bookshelf.
This is my absolute favorite because it is so wonderfully deceptive.
It sounds like a total cliche, honestly. Just do it for 5 minutes. Does that actually work in practice?
It works because it leverages physics, or rather psychological physics. It is all about activation energy.
Activation energy. Define that for us.
Think about basic chemistry. To start a fire, you need a huge amount of heat just to get the very first spark.
Right.
But once the log is actually burning, it easily sustains itself. But generating that first spark is incredibly expensive, energetically speaking.
So in our brains, the spark is the initial decision to just start studying or start building.
Exactly. When you look at a planned 2-hour study session or a massively messy garage, your brain sees a huge energy mountain.
And it triggers that avoidance response we talked about.
The wall goes up before you even touch a tool or open a book.
So it is the anticipation of the pain that stops us, not the pain itself.
Bingo. Anticipation is the killer. The 5-minute rule is a pure negotiation tactic.
Oh.
You look at your brain and you say, okay, we are not climbing the mountain today. We are just walking to the mailbox. Just 5 minutes of work.
And the brain says, okay, I can do 5 minutes. That is cheap. I can afford that minimal amount of energy.
Exactly. It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. It completely overcomes the initial inertia.
But here's the magic, and the source is really specific about this. Once you actually start that 5 minutes, the resistance almost always fades.
You are already in motion.
Newton's first law. An object in motion stays in motion.
Exactly. The hardest part is simply the start. The friction is almost entirely front-loaded in the first few minutes.
So the 5-minute rule is basically a lie, but it is a highly useful lie.
It is a strategic bypass of the brain's alarm system. And the text specifically notes that in John's case and Emma's case, 90% of the time they did not stop at 5 minutes.
They kept going.
They finished the task.
Because stopping after 5 minutes would actually require more effort than just keeping the momentum going.
Sometimes, yes. You have already opened the books. You have already put on the running shoes. The momentum is already there. Why stop?
I really like that phrasing. Strategic bypass.
It is a great tool.
Okay, let us move to strategy number 2. This one is really about the definition of words. Rest versus quit.
Yes.
And the source uses a Formula One riding analogy, which is great.
The pit stop.
I love F1, so this really speaks to me. But for listeners who might not be racing fans, break down the difference here.
Okay. So in a race, a car comes into the pits. It physically stops moving.
Right.
The crew changes the tires. They adjust the front wing. Maybe they add some fuel. That is a pause. The car is clearly not moving toward the finish line during that time.
But why are they stopping?
To go faster afterwards.
Exactly. If they do not stop, the tires will literally blow out and they crash.
Precisely. They are stopping to refuel and repair so they can perform significantly better in the next stint.
That is rest.
That is rest. That is resilience. It is a highly strategic pause specifically designed to aid in the final completion of the race.
Okay, so then what is quitting in this analogy?
Quitting is parking the car in the garage, getting out of the seat, and walking away from the track to go get a hot dog.
The race is over.
The race is definitively over.
The source applies this brilliantly to learning. It says it is perfectly acceptable to take the evening off if you are overwhelmed.
Yes. And this is a really important caveat because we definitely do not want to preach toxic productivity here.
Right.
If your brain is genuinely fried, if the Spanish grammar is just not sticking, if you are literally falling asleep at your desk. Stop. Take the evening off. Watch a movie. Go to sleep. But, and this is the absolute crucial condition, you must come back tomorrow.
The return is what makes it a rest.
Exactly. If you have a concrete plan to return, it is a pit stop.
But if you just walk away,
If you have no plan to return, or if you just vaguely let yourself drift away from the project, it was a quit.
that is such a sharp, clear distinction. I am resting so I can attack this better tomorrow versus I am stopping because I cannot do this anymore.
It is a huge difference in mindset. One is proactive and strategic. The other is purely reactive and defeatist.
Okay, strategy number 3. And this circles all the way back to the bookshelf from the beginning. Done is better than perfect.
Perfection is the ultimate enemy of done.
The source mentions that John's bookshelf, after all that agonizing effort, actually had a tiny scratch on the side.
The permanent flaw.
And maybe one of the shelves was even a millimeter off level.
Right, it was not a masterpiece. But did the shelf function?
Yes, it held books. It did not fall over.
And that right there is the definition of done. Function over form.
How do we apply this to the learner profile? Or maybe someone writing a novel?
In communication or art, perfectionism is completely paralyzing.
It stops you in your tracks.
It is arguably the number one reason people stop. If you are waiting until your Spanish grammar is absolutely perfect before you dare to speak to a native speaker,
You will be silent forever.
you will literally never open your mouth. You will never be done.
You are waiting for a totally scratch-free bookshelf that simply does not exist in the real world.
Exactly. If you speak and you make a grammar mistake, but the other person understands what you wanted to say,
You have succeeded.
the job is done. The idea was successfully transferred from your brain to theirs.
The source puts it so bluntly, which I love. Do not let the fear of the scratch prevent the shelf from being finished.
We so often use our incredibly high standards as a noble excuse to procrastinate.
Oh, that is a hard truth.
It is. We say things like, well, I am not finishing this because I want it to be absolutely perfect.
When, really?
No, you are not finishing it because you are terrified of being judged. Call it what it actually is.
Except the scratch.
Accept the scratch, finish the shelf, put it out into the world.
That really hits home. I think we all have at least a few perfect projects that are currently sitting in pieces on the floor right now because we're so afraid of the scratch.
Oh, definitely. We would much rather have a perfect, pristine fantasy in our heads than an imperfect reality in our hands.
But you cannot live in a fantasy.
No, you cannot store books on a fantasy shelf.
This brings us toward the end of our analysis, but I want to take a moment to recap the big picture here. We started with this abstract idea of grit. And I really feel like my own definition of grit has changed over the last hour.
Really? How so?
I used to think grit was just about not feeling pain, being a machine, being unbreakable. But based on Emma and John,
Yeah.
grit is really just the management of pain.
That is a perfect summary. Grit is not the absence of fatigue.
It is not about being a robot who never gets tired or bored.
Right. Grit is simply the active decision to continue despite the fatigue.
It is acknowledging the tiredness.
Yes, acknowledging it. Acknowledging that internal whisper and saying, I hear you. I know you want a pizza right now, but we are not stopping yet.
And we come all the way back to that mantra. The sign in the gym window.
Do not stop when you are tired. Stop when you are done.
It is such a simple sentence, but it is basically a complete philosophy of life.
It really is, because it places the ultimate authority in your conscious mind, not in your temporary physical sensations.
It puts you back in the driver's seat instead of your biology.
Precisely.
I want to ask you, the listener, right now, directly. What is your wobbly bookshelf this week? What is that project you are currently stuck in the messy middle of?
Or where is your 4-kilometer mark?
Yeah.
Where are your legs feeling heavy right now?
Yeah.
Where is that internal voice telling you that nobody is watching, so you should just quit?
Identify it. Call it out.
Yeah.
And then maybe look for the dog with the ball.
Find the humor in it.
Break the pattern. Or maybe just lie to yourself and say, hey, just 5 more minutes.
Whatever it takes to get you to the finish line. Because you have to remember, the satisfaction of finishing is permanent.
And the pain of the struggle is just a memory.
Exactly.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought today. It is something that popped into my head while we were discussing the 5-minute rule and that whole concept of activation energy.
What is that?
Well, If the 5-minute rule actually works,
Which it does.
right, if it really is true that 5 minutes is often all it takes to completely break the inertia of quitting,
Yeah.
if the barrier stopping us is really just a mental illusion,
Go on.
then we really have to ask ourselves a pretty haunting question.
Okay.
How many failed projects in our lives, how many big dreams that we just walked away from, how many languages we almost learned,
Wow.
we're actually just 5 minutes away from becoming a massive success?
That is a seriously heavy thought.
We parked the car when we really should have just taken a quick pit stop.
We let the cold stop us before the spark could catch fire.
Just 5 minutes. Think about that the next time you want to walk away. Do not stop. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
See you next time. Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're going to dissect a feeling that I guarantee every single person listening has felt.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't mean, felt in the past tense like some distant childhood memory. I mean, you might have felt it this morning.
Right.
It's that specific, hollow, sinking sensation that hits you right when the adrenaline wears off.
The crash.
The crash, exactly. But before we get to the crash, we actually have to talk about the high.
Because the crash doesn't just happen out of nowhere.
Right. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It starts with that rush. You know the one. You're watching like a TED Talk at 11 p.m. about productivity.
Or you see a friend's transformation photo on Instagram.
Yes. Or maybe you just wake up on a random Tuesday with this sudden manic burst of clarity. You slam your hand on the table and you say, this is it.
This is the year.
This is the year I become fluent in Spanish. This is the month I finally write the novel. This is the week I completely turn my life around.
That is what the sources call the inception point.
Yeah,
And it is incredibly intoxicating.
it really is.
Neurochemically speaking, it's actually triggering a massive dopamine release in your brain just by thinking about the goal.
Yeah.
You haven't actually done any work yet, but your brain is, it's rewarding you as if you've already won the marathon.
Which is such a massive trick of the mind. I mean, it feels like you've already done the work just by making the decision to do it. You feel efficient. You feel powerful. So what do?
You lean right into it.
You lean in, you go out and buy the expensive leather-bound notebook. You know, the one with the heavy paper that literally smells like success?
Yeah, or you sign up for the premium gym membership.
Yeah.
The one with the eucalyptus towels and the fancy juice bar.
Exactly. You download the language app and you don't just do the free trial. You pay for the annual subscription because, hey, you're committed.
You are all in.
You are on fire. You do 3 hours of work on day one. You feel like an absolute god. And then
3 days pass.
3 days pass.
Enter the morning after.
The morning after syndrome. This is such a universal experience for anyone listening. You wake up, it's raining outside. You didn't sleep well because the dog was barking at a squirrel at 3 a.m.
Your boss sent a passive-aggressive email at 7 a.m. about some spreadsheet.
Right, and suddenly that burning fire you had, it's not just dampened, it is gone, extinguished. You look at that expensive textbook sitting on the coffee table, the one you were basically caressing 3 days ago, and you don't feel excitement anymore. You just feel heavy.
You feel a lot of guilt and usually this creeping sense of dread.
And this right here is the critical juncture. This is where, statistically, 90% of resolutions just go to die. We wait for that feeling to come back.
Yeah.
We sit there poking the ashes, just waiting for a spark. And when it doesn't ignite, we assume the whole mission has failed. We think, well, the spark is gone, I'm not feeling it anymore, so I guess I'm done.
Which creates a really toxic cycle.
Yeah.
Quit, you feel terrible about yourself, you wait 6 months, and then you get inspired again by another video.
And you buy a new notebook because the old one is tainted with failure.
Exactly. You repeat the process. It's what our source material calls the motivation trap.
Which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. We are pulling apart a really fascinating stack of insights from a source called The Engine of Success, Beyond Motivation to Unbreakable Discipline.
It's a great read.
It really is. We're specifically focusing on this extended dialogue between two success mindset analysts, Emma and John, who dissect this entire cycle with surgical precision.
And the context here is super vital for the listener to understand. This text isn't just a standalone piece. It's actually part 2 of a series they were running on success mechanics.
Right, part 1 was totally different.
Yeah, part 1 was all about that high-octane, almost David Goggins-style intensity. The mantra was, Don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done. And apparently their audience absolutely loved that.
The comments were just flooded with fire emojis, people screaming no excuses and grind and just typing the word finish over and over.
Which is great. Intensity definitely has its place.
Sure, if you need to lift a car off a baby, you need intensity. If you have a massive project deadline in 12 hours, you need intensity.
But the mission for today, and really the specific mission statement of this deep dive, is to figure out what happens when the screaming stops.
Because you can't scream for 6 months straight.
Exactly. Yeah. You physically and mentally cannot. So we are moving beyond the hype today. We're trying to impartially report on the actual mechanics that keep the car moving when the fuel, meaning that emotional spark, runs dry.
And the answer they present isn't more passion. It's discipline.
But Emma and John emphasize that we need to be incredibly careful with that word. Because when most people hear the word discipline, they have a very specific, visceral, usually negative reaction.
They think of a boot camp drill sergeant.
Yeah, they think of suffering, teeth-gritting misery, deprivation, just pure punishment.
Like a nun hitting your knuckles with a ruler because you slouched in your chair. It feels incredibly restrictive.
Right. It feels like a cage. But the source material defines discipline very, very differently. They do not frame it as punishment at all. They frame it as a system.
A system.
Yeah. It's not about moral superiority. It's about operational efficiency.
So let's get into the architecture of the system. Because the source material starts by drawing a really hard line in the sand between motivation and discipline. And I think in casual conversation, we use them as synonyms all the time.
You do.
I might say to a friend, man, I need more motivation to go to the gym. Or I might say, I need more discipline to go to the gym. And I think I'm asking for the exact same ingredient. But Emma and John argue they are different species entirely.
They really are. And the most insightful takeaway from the opening of their analysis is how they categorize motivation. They label it as fickle.
Fickle. Unreliable. Like a really bad date.
They use this weather analogy that I think is brilliant, mostly because it removes the personal judgment we usually pile onto ourselves.
Oh, the picnic analogy.
Right. Imagine you are planning a picnic. You want it to be sunny. You love the sun. The sun obviously makes the picnic better. But you, as a human being, have absolutely zero control over the sun.
None.
Motivation is internal weather. Some days are sunny. You feel energized, capable, excited. Your brain chemicals are firing perfectly. But some days are stormy. You feel lethargic, depressed, anxious, or just completely blah.
And if you only operate on the sunny days, you're basically paralyzed for half the year.
Precisely. If your strategy for success is, I will work when I feel like it, you are surrendering your goals to elements you cannot control. You are just hoping for good weather.
Which is a terrible strategy.
It is. And if you live in a climate like, say, Seattle, or in the context of our brains, if you're going through a highly stressful period at work or in your personal life, you might not see the sun for weeks. If you wait for the sun, you starve.
That is such a relieving perspective for the listener, though, because I think we tend to internalize a lack of motivation as a deep character defect.
Oh, constant.
When I wake up and I don't want to write or don't want to work out, I immediately think, what is wrong with me? Why am I so lazy? If I really wanted this goal, I would be excited about it. I turn it into a moral failing.
That is the exact trap Emma and John are pointing out. You're judging yourself for the weather.
Yeah.
You don't look out the window at the rain and say, I am a profoundly bad person because it is raining today.
Right.
You don't take the rain personally. You just grab an umbrella.
So if motivation is the weather, what exactly is discipline?
Discipline is the umbrella. Or better yet, discipline is the act of going outside regardless of the forecast. It is the vehicle that drives straight through the rain.
Which leads us directly back to the morning after syndrome we were talking about earlier. That exact moment the novelty fades. The source material busts a massive myth right here. It's what they call the expert myth. And this one hit really close to home for me. I have definitely been guilty of believing this. It's this pervasive idea that the pros, the people who have already made it, the best sellers, the Olympic athletes, the CEOs, that they are somehow biologically different from the rest of us.
We assume they have some secret source of endless passion. In the context of the source, they specifically discuss polyglots. You know, people who speak 5 or 6 languages fluently.
Right.
We look at them from the outside and we think, well, their brains are just wired differently. They must genuinely love studying grammar tables. They must wake up every single morning just dying to conjugate irregular verbs.
I love the image they paint of that. Someone throwing off their duvet, pumping their fist in the air and yelling, "Yes! The subjunctive mood, let's go."
It is so absurd when you say it out loud like that, isn't it?
Totally absurd.
But deep down, we actually believe it.
Yeah.
We believe that if we were truly meant to do something, it wouldn't be boring. So when it inevitably gets boring, we think, well, I guess I'm not meant to do this. I guess I'm not a language person.
But the source makes a very deliberate point to laugh at this. They point out that even professional English teachers get completely sick of grammar tables. Even Olympic swimmers hate waking up at 4 a.m. to jump into a freezing cold pool.
Nobody likes the freezing pool.
Exactly. So let's hold on that for a second, because this is a really crucial pivot point in our understanding of the text. If the experts don't love the boring parts and they aren't motivated 24/7, then how are they actually doing it? What is the mechanism driving them if it isn't excitement?
This is really the crux of the whole deep dive. John, the analyst in our source text, puts it very explicitly. He says the difference is not having more energy or more passion. The difference is the ability to divorce your actions from your feelings.
Divorce your actions from your feelings. That sounds almost clinical, like being a robot.
It can sound a bit cold at first, but Emma and John frame it as a superpower. Think about it. If your actions are married to your feelings, meaning they are legally fundamentally bound together, then you can only act when the feelings say yes. You are a complete slave to your mood. But if you divorce them, your actions become independent agents. You do the thing because it is the thing that needs doing, not because you happen to feel like doing it in that moment.
Okay, I buy the concept. I really do. But for the listener who is maybe sitting in traffic right now thinking, okay, divorce my actions from my feelings. Great theory. Sounds nice on a podcast, but how do I actually do that in real life? It feels like trying to hold your breath forever.
The source material offers a really sticky analogy here to help operationalize this concept. It's the amateur versus the professional mindset, or, as they sometimes put it, the hobby versus the job.
I loved this section of the text because it frames it in a way that makes you realize you are already disciplined. You just might be applying it in the wrong areas of your life.
Exactly. They ask the reader to think about their employment. So for our listeners, think about your daily job. Unless you are incredibly universally lucky, there are probably mornings, maybe even most mornings, where you absolutely do not want to go.
Oh, for sure.
You're tired, the bed is warm, you're grumpy, you know you have a difficult meeting with a client at 9 a.m., but you go. You get up, you shower, you dress, you commute, and you sit at your desk. Why?
Well, the obvious answer is I don't want to starve. I need to pay rent. I don't want to get fired.
True, there are massive external consequences. But deeper than that, Emma points out that it is a non-negotiable commitment. You don't call your boss at 8:55 a.m. and say, hey, I'm just not really feeling the vibe today. My motivation is low. The weather is internal rain, so I'm going to skip the quarterly review.
You'd be left right out of the office or fired immediately.
Exactly. That is the professional mindset in action. You show up regardless of the mood. But, and here is the real kicker of their argument, when it comes to our personal goals, our dreams, the things that supposedly matter most to us in the world, like learning a language or getting fit or writing a book, we treat them like amateurs.
We treat them like hobbies.
Yes, we do them when it's convenient. We do them when it's fun.
That is such a harsh truth to confront. We literally treat our employers with more respect than we treat our own dreams. We show up reliably for a boss we might not even like, but we flake on ourselves the very first moment it gets uncomfortable.
Precisely. The secret they're revealing here is to simply take that professional framework, which you already possess, you use it every single day from 9 to 5, and apply it to your 5 to 9. Treat your Spanish practice with the exact same grim reliability that you treat your Tuesday morning staff meeting. It's not about magically finding discipline out in the ether. It's about transferring it from one area of your life to another.
It's about professionalizing your passion. Okay, I want to drill down even further on this distinction between motivation and discipline, because the source material uses another metaphor that really stuck with me. They compare them to two very different types of friends.
Yes, the two friends analogy. This is fantastic for visualization. It really personifies the internal struggle we all face.
So introduce us to friend number one, motivation.
Motivation is the party friend. We all have this friend in our friend group. They are incredibly high energy. They bring the glitter. They buy the first round of shots. They are just incredibly fun to be around when things are going well.
They're the one hyping you up at the bar on Friday night saying, we can do anything. Let's book a flight to Vegas right now.
Exactly. But then Saturday morning comes,
Right.
and you have to move apartments. You live on the 4th floor. There is no elevator. You have a sleeper sofa made of solid lead. So you call motivation.
Straight to voicemail, ghosted, nowhere to be found.
Or if they do answer, they say, oh, sorry, man, I'm just so tired from last night. I'm really not feeling it today. Good luck, though.
Because motivation does not do heavy lifting. It only does the fun stuff.
Right. But then there is friend number 2, discipline.
Tell us about discipline.
Discipline is the boring friend. Maybe they don't have the absolute best jokes. Maybe they aren't the life of the party. Maybe they wear very sensible, supportive shoes. But when you text them about the agonizing 4th floor move, discipline shows up at 6:45 in the morning.
With coffee.
With coffee. And a rented truck. And a back brace.
Discipline is the friend who quietly helps you pivot that massive sofa around the tight stairwell corner. Emma and John emphasize this point heavily. We spend our entire lives chasing the approval of the flaky friend, motivation, when we should be cultivating a deep, lifelong relationship with the truck friend, discipline.
We need way more truck friends in our internal lives. I love that so much. So we've established the problem. Motivation is weather. It's a flaky friend. We've established the goal. To become a professional, to rely on the truck friend. But now we need actual tactics. Because the source acknowledges something very real that we have to address. Willpower is a limited resource. You can't just grit your teeth forever.
Correct. And this is a really critical nuance in their work. Discipline does not equal suffering. If you try to white-knuckle your way through life, just forcing yourself to do things you hate by sheer force of will, you are going to burn out. That is biologically guaranteed.
The brain is too smart for that. The source is very clear on this. You cannot fight your own brain forever. The brain always wins eventually. It will find a way to make you stop.
So the solution isn't more force, it's a better system. And this brings us to what I think is the tactical gold of this episode, the 2-day rule.
The 2-day rule. It is beautifully simple, deceptively so, but it is the ultimate safety net that keeps the whole system from crashing down.
Break it down for us, because usually when we talk about unbreakable discipline, the mainstream advice is always never miss a day, no days off, grind, sleep when you're dead.
And that is exactly why people fail. Because never miss a day is an incredibly fragile philosophy. It's brittle. If you drop a glass vase, it shatters into a million pieces.
Yeah.
You need a system that bounces when you drop it. The 2-day rule is flexible. The fundamental rule is you are allowed to miss 1 day.
Wait, really? We're doing a deep dive into unbreakable discipline, and step 1 is literally you can take a day off.
Yes, because it is realistic. John explicitly mentions in the text that life happens. You catch the flu, your child gets sick at school, the car breaks down on the highway, you have a mental health crisis. If your entire system is built on the premise of I must be perfect, the very first time you get the flu, your system breaks.
And once the streak is broken, complete psychological collapse follows. You think, well, I ruined the 50-day streak, so who even cares anymore?
The what the hell effect.
Exactly. I ate one cookie and ruined my diet for the day, so I might as well eat the entire box of cookies and order a large pizza.
We have all been there. It feels entirely logical in the moment, doesn't it?
It totally does. You're like, I'm already a failure today, so let's maximize the pleasure and start over on Monday.
The 2-day rule prevents that exact spiral. It builds in a realistic failure buffer. So the condition is you can miss 1 day. That is just a slip. It's a data point. But you are never allowed to miss 2 days in a row.
Okay, let's look at the psychology behind that. Why is the second day so absolutely lethal compared to the first?
Because of the slippery slope. Emma explains that missing 1 day is just a glitch in the matrix. It's an outlier. But missing 2 days, that is the start of a brand new habit.
The habit of not doing the thing.
Exactly. If you miss your language practice on Monday, that's fine. Forgive yourself immediately. But that makes Tuesday the most important day of your life regarding that specific goal. Tuesday becomes completely non-negotiable. You have to prioritize it above everything else to stop the slide.
It effectively stops the bleeding before it becomes fatal. I like that. It converts a perceived failure into a strategic rest day.
And it completely shifts your mental focus from perfection to consistency. Perfection is mathematically impossible. Consistency is highly achievable. The goal isn't to never fall down. It's to never stay down on the mat for more than 24 hours.
Speaking of consistency, the source material actually breaks out the hard math on this. And I always love when we can put concrete numbers on these abstract feel-good concepts. They compare two specific scenarios, the binge learner versus the consistent learner.
This is where the magic of compounding really shines. Let's look at the math they provided in the text. Scenario A is the consistent learner. They commit to learning just 5 words a day in their target language.
5 words? I mean, that sounds almost negligible. That's what, 3 minutes of work?
Maybe 5 minutes if you're writing them out slowly. It feels incredibly insignificant in the moment. It feels like it's definitely not enough to matter. But you do that for a year. That is nearly 2,000 words.
And for context for the listener, in language learning, 2,000 words is extremely significant.
It's massive. 2,000 words is functionally fluent for daily conversation. You can travel, order food, have casual chats with locals, watch TV, and understand the gist. All from 5 minutes a day. That is the sheer power of compounding effort.
Now contrast that with scenario B, the binge learner. This is our friend who relies heavily on motivation.
Right. The binge learner wakes up on a Saturday morning, incredibly inspired by a foreign movie or a song. They sit down and study for 8 hours straight. They cram 100 words into their brain in one single day. They feel like an absolute hero. They post about it on social media. #grind, #language learning.
But then Sunday comes, they're exhausted, their brain is totally fried.
So they don't study Sunday or Monday. In fact, they burn out so hard that they don't even touch the language app for a solid month because the mere thought of sitting down for another 8 hours exhausts them.
Right.
And because the human brain is a use it or lose it machine, they end up forgetting 95% of those 100 words.
So at the end of the year, the slow and steady person, who quite literally never broke a sweat, has acquired a massive new life skill. While the intensity person, who worked themselves to the point of sheer exhaustion, has absolutely nothing to show for it.
The source calls consistency the key compounder. It functions like the interest rate on your effort. Small, tiny deposits, made daily, beat the lottery ticket approach every single time. It's entirely about volume over intensity.
It's the classic tortoise and the hare fable, but grounded in actual behavioral data.
It is, and the source actually revisits that exact fable. We always think the tortoise won because he was, well, lucky, or because the hare was arrogant and decided to take a nap. But the text argues the tortoise won because of relentless forward motion. He just didn't stop. He didn't sprint. He didn't have high intensity, but he never stopped moving.
There's another layer to this discipline system that Emma and John bring up, and it moves us from the tactical rules into the psychological realm. It's about how we talk about ourselves, the identity shift.
This is where the deep dive gets really profound. This is deep psychology. They argue that the literal words we use to describe our goals actually shape our biological ability to achieve them.
They highlight this very common phrase, I'm trying.
Right. Think about how often you hear that, or say it yourself. I am trying to quit smoking. I am trying to learn English. I am trying to lose weight. The source analyzes the psychological weight of this phrasing. When you say, I am trying, you are actively implying struggle. You are implying that the action is something external to you that you are just attempting to grab hold of.
It leaves the back door wide open for failure. If you say, I'm trying, and it doesn't work out, you can just say, well, I tried, but I failed. It sounds like you're already expecting it not to work. It sounds tentative.
Exactly. It's a very tentative posture. It signals to your brain that this new behavior is temporary. The massive shift they suggest is moving your vocabulary from I am trying to simply I am.
I am an English speaker. I am a runner. I am a writer.
Yes. Even if you aren't perfectly fluent yet. Even if you only jog for 5 minutes around the block. Even if you've only written one single page of your novel. The psychological logic is this. If you identify as a runner, what do runners do? They run, even when it rains, because that is who they are. If you identify deeply as a runner, putting your shoes on and running in the rain isn't some heroic, agonizing act of willpower. It's just acting in consistency with your own identity. It completely ceases to be a chore on a to-do list and becomes an expression of self. I run because I am a runner.
This is essentially a sophisticated rebrand of fake it till you make it, isn't it?
In a way, yes, but a very positive structural one. Emma calls it embody it until you become it. You are intentionally stepping into the shoes of the person you want to become and then acting in accordance with what that person would do. You vote for your new identity with your daily actions.
I love that distinction. You vote for your identity. You're not doing the thing merely to get the end result. You're doing the thing because it's who you inherently are. It completely changes the stakes of the activity.
And that profound shift leads us to the final and perhaps most philosophical point of the entire source material, the philosophy of struggle.
This was the part of the text that honestly gave me chills a little bit, because as a society, we spend so much time and money trying to avoid the bad days. We try to hack our way around any form of resistance. We buy the most comfortable ergonomic shoes. We download highly gamified apps with bright colors. We do everything in our power to make the learning process easy. But the source suggests we have it completely backwards.
They do. They make a very bold claim. They argue that the days you do not want to do the work, the rainy days, the exhausted days, those morning after days we talked about, those are actually the most important days of all.
Why? Why are the miserable days mathematically more important than the good high-energy days?
Because doing the work when it is easy changes absolutely nothing about you. If you study when you're super excited and highly caffeinated, it's just entertainment. You're just having fun. You aren't building any new neural pathways of discipline. You aren't challenging your baseline capacity, but studying when you are exhausted. Working when you are feeling massive internal resistance. That is where mental toughness is actually manufactured.
That's the gym session that really counts. It's the last rep when your muscles are visibly shaking that actually forces the muscle to grow.
Exactly. The easy reps don't grow the muscle. John has this key quote in the text that summarizes it perfectly. He says, "Transformation happens in the struggle. If you remove the struggle, you remove the transformation. If it were completely easy, everyone on earth would do it, and the achievement would lose all its inherent value."
So when you wake up and you feel that heavy resistance, when you feel that total lack of motivation, instead of seeing it as a sign to stop and go back to sleep,
you should see it as a signal. That resistance is essentially the check engine light, but for personal growth. It means the real, meaningful work is finally starting. It means you have reached the absolute frontier of your current ability, and pushing past that specific point of friction is where the growth lives.
That is the big aha moment for me. Resistance isn't a stop sign. It's the starting gun.
Beautifully put. It really is.
Wow. Okay, let's bring this all back together. We have covered a massive amount of ground in this deep dive, and I want to make sure the listener can walk away with this exact toolkit firmly in hand.
We definitely have. We started by outlining the trap, the fickle, weather-like nature of motivation versus the reliable, steady engine of discipline. Stop checking the internal weather forecast. Just bring an umbrella.
Right, and then we talked about the amateur versus the professional mindset. Are you treating your life goals like a casual hobby, or are you treating them like a non-negotiable job? Are you relying on the flaky party friend who ghosts you or the truck friend who shows up at dawn?
Then we provided the tactical tool, the 2-day rule. You can miss one day because life is chaotic, but you can never miss 2. Stop the slippery slope before it even starts. Forgive the initial slip, but absolutely demand the recovery.
We looked at the math of consistency, 5 words a day versus 100 words a month. Small, consistent efforts, compounded over time, will beat sporadic intensity every single time. Be the tortoise, just keep moving forward.
And we discussed the internal identity shift. Stop telling yourself you are trying and start telling yourself you are. Embody the identity.
And finally, embrace the struggle itself. The bad days are the ones that actually make you. The resistance is where the growth happens.
So what does this actually mean for you, the listener, right now? The source material actually ended with a very specific challenge for their audience, and I think we should pass that right along to ours.
Yes, the comment challenge. They asked their listeners to identify one simple daily habit, and importantly, not a massive outcome like become fluent, because that's a result, not a habit, but a tiny action step. Read 5 pages, listen to 1 podcast in your target language, do 10 push-ups before your shower.
And then commit to it publicly. So even if you just write it down in your own notes app right now, or tell a close friend, or post it on your social media, define the habit today and apply the 2-day rule starting tomorrow morning.
And remember, when tomorrow comes and it's raining outside and you're tired and your brain is screaming that you don't want to do it,
that just means the conditions for actual transformation are finally present. The real work is ready to happen.
Precisely. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We talked extensively about how the struggle is mathematically necessary for growth. If that's true, if transformation truly only happens in the struggle, then maybe we need to completely stop wishing for our paths to be easy. Maybe we should actually start actively welcoming the days when we feel heavy resistance. Because if life is always perfectly easy and motivation is always magically high, are we actually growing at all? Or are we just being entertained?
That is a deeply powerful question. Constant comfort might actually be the ultimate enemy of progress.
Something to really think about the next time you really don't want to go to the gym or open that textbook. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.
Stay disciplined out there.